Hey John, introduce yourself please.
I'm John Bumgarner. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the United States Cyber Consequences Unit, which is a strategic think tank that provides research to the U.S. government and other entities.
And you guys just published a report recently. I understand a lot of it was classified, but it was about the Georgia and Russia cyber war. Could you talk a little bit about that, what your report found?
Well, I mean, the things with the report, the unclassified version of the report, found that a lot of the actors that were involved were Russians, a lot of Russian sympathizers also from multiple countries. We had countries involved from Ukraine, Latvia, Russia, and from Moscow itself. We had the people from the United States, San Francisco area, that were involved in the attacks.
Now, when you say involved, were they acting participants?
Acting participants.
So they knew exactly what they were doing?
They were actually collaborating online in hundreds of blogs and forums online, talking about the attacks, what they can do to increase the attacks. Some of the people that were involved in San Francisco wrote very efficient attack code and posted online that anyone could download and utilize. Some of the attack code also used components from commercial vendors. They just wrapped a wrapper around that code to make it more efficient and weaponize the code. And all this code was quickly disseminated online, and as the attacks progressed over day one, August 8th, as they progressed into August 9th, the attack code started improving as it progressed because more people got involved, and you could tell the proficiency, their technology proficiency of the people were involved, because you could tell that some were very efficient coders that were involved.
Now, were those guys, I know there's some debate about is cyber warfare real, and that was the Russian government even behind, let's say, the attacks in Estonia or even Georgia? Were those actors political? I mean, obviously they were political, but were they state-sponsored, or?
Well, it's hard to identify an actor as being a state-sponsored actor.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
The problem with cyber conflicts in general is that attribution's a problem, and people want to try to point a finger at a single nation-state, and it's very difficult to do that.
Why?
And the reason behind that is because there's the trail of evidence. If you go back and look at the North Korean attacks, where the people said it was North Korea attacking the U.S. and South Korea, those attacks, some of the command and control systems that were used for the botnets were in the United States. Some of the attacking systems themselves were New Zealand, Australia, China, Singapore. Okay. So how do you actually say that the North Koreans were responsible for it?
Right.
Now, if you go back to the Georgian attacks, it's very easy to point that back to Russian actors, because some of the systems that were utilized were owned and operated by Russians.
Okay.
Some of the systems that were used had been utilized in previous events, cybercrime activities, by Russian nationals.
Were the codes in Russian as well?
Or there were several of the botnets. One of the major botnets we used was a Russian botnet.
Okay.
A Black Energy botnet. Most of the code is written with the help files all in Russian language.
Interesting. So now, one big question that's out there is cyber warfare a reality? You touched upon that, but can you explain more?
Cyber warfare so far has not been a reality.
Okay.
We really haven't seen a real true cyber war yet, where it's state-on-state warfare, where there's no kinetic activity.
Right.
Warfare in general has changed. Now most wars, or even any regional conflict, will have a cyber component. Just like the Georgian conflict, when they had the military aggressing across the border into South Ossetia, we had the cyber component start right after that. And so we can see future conflicts where a cyber component will be very important. One of the things that I just wrote about is computers as being used as instruments of war. In the future, we have the potential to have militaries and even civilian actors launch very devastating cyber strikes against a nation.
Okay. So who's at risk then in a cyber attack? You mentioned anybody can do this, and obviously people's computers have been hijacked and used as netbots attacks. Can you explain more about that?
Botnets in general are very, I call, low spectrum weapon.
Right.
I have a chart that breaks down the spectrum of weapons.
Right.
And the botnets in general, denial of service attacks, are in a lower spectrum. There's much more devastating attacks, like for example, trying to take on an oil refinery You could attack an oil refinery and disrupt the burner system for the BTUs, increase the temperature, and cause it to have a catastrophic failure.
Wow.
That's the potential. But in general, I mean, anybody can be involved in a cyber conflict.
Right.
It can be, a nation state. It can be a terrorist group, or some green movement group, or some political action group. It could be even a common set of citizens that have some type of objective. I mean, they can coordinate via instant messaging or Twitter and collaborate in near real time to plan and execute a cyber attack. So everyone's can be a victim of cyber attack. It can be a nation state can be a victim. It could be a corporation that someone doesn't agree with their policies on,
right.
Like the G8 or G20 or the UN, when they're publishing some type of human rights report that may not look favorably on another nation state. They become a victim of some type of cyber conflict. Or it can be, a bank or a restaurant that's overseas. Any of these can be a victim of the conflict.
Who's more at risk, though? Is
well, the biggest
private
people,
enterprise?
The biggest people at risk right now is private enterprise.
Okay.
If you look at America, we have one of the statistics, which is very low. It's wrong right now. It says that 85% of all the critical infrastructures are owned by private sector. That is actually much higher than that.
Okay.
The U.S. government owns very little critical infrastructure. So all these companies that own our critical infrastructure, not only the United States, but the United Kingdom, Russia, China, most of these infrastructures are owned by private companies. Their bottom line is important, and spending money on cybersecurity is not always the best thing. And sometimes some of this equipment that's put into the electric grid or water systems have been in existence there for about 30 years.
Wow.
So the vulnerabilities that were not even thought about 30 years ago are now becoming a problem. And in the future, we're going to have more problems. The United States and the UK are pushing energy security with the smart grid technology, green energy. Those things are going to potentially make us more vulnerable if we don't start looking at those in the future. And we need to look at those things now, because then eventually someone's going to write a worm. It's going to take out a bunch of electrical meters, potentially in a hospital, or they're going to take out a solar array that costs multi-billions of dollars, and we're going to have a major problem.
And do you think adversary countries or states are looking at that, at our potential weakness? I mean, what's the probability you think that they would take advantage of that?
I know there's already individuals that have already footprinted some of our critical infrastructures throughout the world.
Really? So yes. I've heard some comments made that the internet can be shut down in 30 minutes, or our power grids could be shut down for 6 months.
It's not that the internet can be shut down. I mean, it would take a big attack to try to shut down the internet. It would be very difficult to shut down the internet.
All right.
It's just not, you can't turn one switch.
Sure.
But taking down an electrical system, or taking down a chemical plant, or taking down an oil refinery, or causing a manufacturing company to fail, or disrupting drug supply, it's very easy to do if you're a skilled attacker.
Yeah, that's scary.
It's very scary.
And then one last question. You mentioned too about people using botnet attacks, coordinated attack, but I know that even myself at home, my computer is at risk. Do you think the government should be working harder to educate people to make sure that we don't have a lot of these computers just sitting out there?
Well, President Obama, if you've been following him, he's the e-president, as you know.
Right, sure.
He really understands technology.
Right.
And one thing that President Obama has done in his administration is started pressing a public-private partnership. And if you go and read some of the doctrine that's been coming out of the White House and out of the Department of Homeland Security, you'll see that they're really telling Americans and others that they need to secure their systems. And so the UK is doing the same thing. So security really starts at home.
Right.
But in order for that, we need to start educating our citizens more.
Got it. Okay. Sounds like a lot of work to do, but progress is being made, right?
There's a lot of work to do, and it'll probably take years, if not decades, to fix these problems.
Wow. Okay. Well, especially when the stuff moves lightning fast, that may be a problem.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Thanks very much.
Thanks.